This episode contains discussion around handling one's personal finances and investing. The information shared in this podcast is for informative and educational purposes only and is not to be taken as financial advice. Remember that any investing or personal finance decisions that you take are your responsibility alone and it's strongly advisable to do your own research before making any decisions and consult the opinion of a professional where applicable.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Multinational Money Podcast.
Welcome back to the Multinational Money Podcast. My name is Johnny, your host. And if you're interested in learning more about expat life, financial freedom, and making the most of global opportunities, then this is your podcast. Today's guest is a qualified financial advisor, an award-winning content creator for his personal finance content on social media, and has also been featured in the UK mainstream media to give his opinion on diverse financial matters affecting the UK. I'm so excited to be speaking to Timi Merriman-Johnson, also known as Mr. Money Jar. Let's get right into it. All right, Timi, welcome to the Multinational Money Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Johnny.
Thanks for being on. It's a pleasure. And I see you got a fresh trim for the occasion as well. Looks amazing.
Just for you, man. Just for you.
I feel that. I feel it. So, Timi, let's start talking a little bit about you. So, the name Mr. Money Jar, it's very catchy. Where did you come up with the idea from?
I actually brainstormed the name for like 3 days, and I really wanted a name that kind of spoke to saving money and being sensible. I didn't want it to kind of shut anyone out, so no Mr. Moneybags or anything like that. And my surname is double-barreled. It's Merriman-Johnson, so it's sort of a play on my name as well.
Okay, yeah. Nice, very creative, very good, good name. It's you're a very popular figure these days. I see on social media, so very catchy, and I'm sure that's helped you on your way up as well.
Yeah, thank you. Although for the last month, I haven't really posted anything. I'm going on a bit of a journey with social media at the moment, actually.
Yeah? Do you want to tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah. So as we know, we've just emerged from the winter months in the UK. And if I don't have if I found out that I had seasonal affective disorder, basically, I wouldn't be surprised. Because once the clocks go back in October, from that point on, it's just like a countdown to when my batteries are going to run out because of how cold and dark it gets. And I even think genuinely like getting away during those months into a warmer country, like Spain, for example, is going to have to be something I consider going forwards. And as someone who runs her own business and works remotely, this year, I've been very thankful to have made it to March before those batteries ran out. So March, I became burnt out. It took me a couple of weeks to realize as well, but I was really tired all the time, had difficulty concentrating. My sleep was okay. And I just took the month off, and I didn't really check social media that much. I didn't really post that much. At the time of recording, if you check my feed now, you'll see that I haven't really recorded anything outside of what I had to contractually post. And the reason why I share this is because I think what we do is really hard, and we've been doing it for like 3-4 years now, and I believe that we're here to stay, and many of us are going to continue doing it going forwards. And so there's just a lesson there in working sustainably and not burning yourself out. You know, we just had the bank holiday weekend, Easter weekend in the UK. And for the first time in 3 and a bit years, I didn't check my socials once. I didn't check my phone. I didn't respond to any messages. I didn't like anyone's posts. I didn't comment on anything. At least I don't believe I did either of those things. I didn't even think about social media. And I'm sure you know, as someone who does this, like, imagine what that's like, not thinking about social media for 4 days.
It's incredibly freeing. I know exactly what you mean, and I can relate to everything you've just said in terms of social media, and even talking about the winter as well. Like, you know, in Madrid, it gets cold in the winter, but actually I don't feel as down as I used to in the UK, like when I was there, because there's still sunlight and the days are a bit milder. Over those winter months,
You made a
I
good
definitely
choice.
notice a difference.
So you're based in Madrid?
Yeah, Madrid, yeah.
I'm coming to Madrid in a couple months' time, so we should speak after this. Like maybe see if we can hang
100%,
out. Yeah.
100%, mate. Yes, definitely. And what you said about remote working as well is something we're obviously going to come to later in the interview as well, because I think this is a point that would be interesting to explore with you. So, a bit more about yourself. Tell us a bit more about kind of your personal background, kind of growing up, and your professional background. Like, did you go to university? What kind of things have you done for work up until now when you've kind of gone out and you're on your own doing your own venture?
I did go to university. I studied law, but I didn't go on to practice law. And then my first job out of uni was in financial PR. And that's for a PR firm that had mainly financial clients. And it was my job to do research, both going on government sources and that sort of thing, the Office for National Statistics, gov.uk and stuff, and find data and stats which could be turned into press releases which we could send out on behalf of our clients. And I also did a lot of work around consumer surveys and survey writing as well. I had a fantastic manager at the time, and even though I didn't know that much about money, he helped me to get interested in it because he was just so good at his job, and he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. We're good friends now. And that was when I got my first foray into like what is investing, what's a balance transfer credit card. There's all this jargon flying around all the time, and just being a naturally curious person, I wanted to learn about it. After that, I spent some time in marketing, influencer marketing to be specific. So that's when I learned that this was even a job. And then I also spent some time with a charity as the finance manager. So in a very weird way, all the previous jobs I've had up until this point have served as lessons in the job I do today. And then I'm still constantly growing and learning. I don't have any public speaking experience prior to this. I didn't have any social media experience per se prior to this. So there's a lot of things I've had to learn on the job. But I do have, quite like 10 years or so experience in like financial stuff. So it's not a complete accident I'm doing this, is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. And you say it was kind of in a weird way, but at the end, it was maybe no accident. But I think a lot of what the experiences we have in our life and a lot of what we go through, it often serves to build us up and prepare us for the challenges and experiences that we have ahead of us as well.
Yeah, I guess the lesson that I'm trying to share there, particularly to maybe young people that might listen to this, is that maybe you're working in a fast food restaurant, or you're doing a paper round, or you're doing something which seems menial or doesn't seem like it's going to ladder up into something else. And what I'm trying to say is that absolutely will. Everything that you do, you can learn something from that, and you can take it into the next thing that you work on. If you work in a fast food restaurant, for example, or in hospitality in general, you're speaking to people face to face every day. You're learning how to serve people, how to build a rapport with people, how to deal with complaints, and that's going to stand you in really good stead versus someone who doesn't have that experience, for example. So it's just about taking what you can from each experience that you have and trusting that it will ladder up into something bigger and better down the line.
Yeah. I did 3 years of fast food work through sixth form in university, cool, and a paper round before that as well. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. Both as much as, was painful lesson at the time, a lot of energy, didn't seem like a lot of reward when I was at that age, but a lot of the skills I've developed have definitely allowed me to get to the next step and have given me the skills and the qualities that, have helped me get to where I am today.
Nice.
All right, so now let's talk a bit about personal finance. So how was your relationship with money growing up? How was money kind of talked about in your family, and how has that influenced the way you think about money today? And has anything maybe changed in the way that you think about money over your personal finance journey?
I learned some good money lessons growing up. The way that I would broadly set it out is that when I was growing up, money was spoken about in terms of defense, saving, paying for stuff in cash, not getting into debt, keeping your costs low, all of that stuff. I was definitely taught, and I'm very grateful for all of those lessons. And then growing up, I've learned about offense, and a lot of that learning has come through either work or research or reading that I've done. So investing, growing your income, forward planning. That's what the last 5 to 10 years of my life have been about, what I've been learning about. And similar to sports, you need both defense and offense to be able to win the game. And what I have identified in the last few years of doing this is that lots of us understand the defensive side of money, but when it comes to cutting your costs, for example, that is a very important thing to do. And there are all things that we know we spend money on lavishly that we could cut away. But if you really want to change your financial outcomes, making more money, increasing your income, starting a business or a side hustle, investing, these things are going to greatly outperform cancelling your Netflix over the long term. And hopefully through the work that I'm doing and you're doing and the people in our industry are doing, we're showing people ways in which they can think about money a bit differently.
Yeah. We have the exact pretty much journey with personal finance. And I love the way you just described it as well. I was also taught like a very defensive, conservative approach on money. Wasn't really taught about like the investing side and making more money side of things coming up. And that's exactly what I've learned over my journey as well. And something that I thought about that you also, well, something you said that kind of made me think as well is I played basketball growing up. And in basketball, like to be a good defender, you're kind of taught to like make the offensive player like go where you want to go. So you do that as the defense. As the offense, like your job is to kind of read what the defender does and then react. But in theory, what I'm getting at here is like the offense can always make one more move and make the next move than the defender. Like the defense will only go so far. And I think that's the same with money. Like defense, like you said, will only get you like to a certain point. There's a limit to how far you can cut costs. But with offense, like growing your money, building more streams of income, it's unlimited. The potential is unlimited. You can go as high as you want, as far as you want.
Sure.
So we talked about where Mr. Money Jar came from. We talked a bit about how the idea started. What is your mission with what you do with Mr. Money Jar today?
It's a great question. I think my mission is I think it's twofold. I think there's the thing that people see me do day to day, which is to get out accessible financial education to people all over the country. Because, I could do my job for a year and it still wouldn't be done. Because every year, new people are born, turn 18, start going to uni for the first time, start new jobs, retire, get married, get divorced, buy houses. So it's like an ongoing thing. And so the financial education challenge in the UK and indeed in other countries is to get out standardized financial education to people at the point in their life when they need it in a way that they can understand it. And that's an ongoing thing. So that's one of my missions. And it just so happens that social media is a great way to do that because we all live on our phones now, for better or for worse. But, I also do talks and that sort of thing as well. That's one job that I do. I think there's a second job that I do, which is, broadening out what a black person can be in the UK context. I'm not saying that I only have people that are black that are following me, or that I only inspire or speak to black audiences. My content's for everyone. But I have like 2 younger brothers, and I hope that maybe people from later generations look at what I do and go, oh, maybe I could become a financial advisor. Maybe I could go on TV. Maybe I could start my own social media thing. And it's something that I'm consciously aware of, being an ethnic minority in the UK. So I think those are two jobs that I do. One is a bit more active, and then the other is just kind of passively happening in the background.
Yeah, I want to explore the second point you made a little bit
Sure.
more, which is really important and really good that you raised it as well. From my perspective, what I think is a really good thing looking at the UK personal finance scene is I think there is a broad range of
It's very
diversity
diverse.
represented.
Yeah.
Yeah, both in terms of gender, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of, someone who's a finance professional or someone who, just works the average 9 to 5 and talks about saving. There's something for everybody, and I think everyone can find someone they identify with.
It's hugely diverse. Yeah, that's why I said I have the demographics that, as a black person, I think I'm almost representing that as a demographic. But yeah, it's a hugely diverse space. There's parents, there's mums, there's insurance professionals, there's financial advisors, there's students, there's people who work in jobs, people who do content creation full-time, part-time, like whatever person you want to follow, there'll probably be someone or people out there in our space that speak to you in a way that relates to you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really cool.
Yeah. And at the same time, whilst you do have that second kind of mission to represent kind of the black community, you also remain very universal as well, I believe. Anybody can watch Timi and learn from Timi and like find you a relatable character. It's something I like about your content as well.
Thank you.
You've worked with some of the biggest brands in the UK. You've been nominated for awards. You've been to Downing Street, talked with, people from the government. But is there any one thing that stands out that you're most proud of from what you've done with your work with Mr. Money?
Yeah, just to clarify that, I haven't been to Downing Street yet. I did go to Treasury the other week, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
But some of us have been called to Downing Street, and that's also very cool. I think the moment that stands out to me, and I share this story because it's the first thing that came to my mind the minute you asked me that question, it is one time, the first time I was spotted by someone in public, not at an industry event, and I was on my way home from attending an event, and a guy saw me outside the tube station, and he kind of pointed at me, and I looked behind me because I wasn't sure if he was pointing at me, and yeah, he said he'd seen my content online, and that the stuff I said was really helpful, and then he asked to take a selfie with me, and we hugged each other warmly, and it was really cool.
Nice.
And I think the reason why I shared this is because I think that social media makes big numbers seem small, but real life makes small numbers seem big. On social media, you can post something and get 50 likes and be like, do you know what? That didn't really do so well. Or you can post a video and it gets like 200 views, and you're like, oh, I only got 200 views. But when you meet a whole person in real life who's actually listened to what you said and taken it on board and changed the course of their life as a result of that, that's obviously huge. And a shift that I'm trying to have when it comes to social media at the moment is to remember that. You can post a video, we can post this podcast even, and you can get one listen. But that one listen is a whole person who, has now bettered themselves in some way, hopefully. And that is worth more than if you got 1,000 listens, but the person just had it on the background and didn't actually listen to what we were saying, or didn't take any action off the back of what we were saying. That's not me saying that reach isn't important. Reach is, of course, hugely important, and the brands that we work with deserve to, they pay us to access our audiences and to be able to market their products, and therefore that's the service that they're paying for, and they deserve to be serviced in that way. But we can't forget about the real people on the other end of this internet thing that we're all a part of. One person altering the course of their life is enough for me.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And it's something that I have to remind myself as well, that when I started this, it was all about, helping people. and it always will be about helping people and having an impact on people. But there's many times, I look at my YouTube, like same as you probably look at your stats and say, this video could have done better. I'm not getting the views I want. I'm not growing at the rate I want. But if someone leaves a comment or if someone says to me, I find your content really helpful, I'm moving to Spain as a result of that, or I've done this as a result of that, or you've helped me to do this, then it's truly moving. Like you changed the life, you impacted a life, like you
It's
said.
this is a random example that I'm just pulling out of thin air, but like imagine if in 20 years time or something, you're still living in Spain and then there's someone running for like PM or PM or president that you have in Spain.
So the English translation would be Prime Minister.
PM, yeah. So
yeah.
PM or mayor or something. And they were like, yeah, like I watched one of Johnny's videos. There's this channel that I used to watch, and then because of that, I'm doing XYZ financial thing. Like, you just never know the future impact of your work and who's seeing it. So it's a good thing to bear in mind.
It's true, yeah. Now let's come back a little bit to kind of the remote work aspect of your thing, because as much as you're very much focused on the UK, your content is for a UK audience. As you said yourself, you work remotely, you want to travel around a bit, and you're starting to think about it. Would you ever consider like going fully digital nomad, or would you, travel for part of the year? What would be your ideal digital nomad lifestyle if you had to choose?
I'd always want to have a base in the UK, but then I'd want to have the option to be able to head out to wherever I want to and still be able to make money whilst doing that. Because now that we have the internet, it's not a case of either or. I think doing stuff offline is important, but I think only doing stuff offline could be you shooting yourself in the foot. And likewise, I think it's important to do stuff online, but to completely ignore offline, I think would be a mistake, because there is no online without stuff happening in the real world. And this goes for social media too. There is no content unless people actually go out into the real world and do stuff. So for me, being able to travel around and work will just be about having options. So I'm in the UK, it's miserable. It's like Christmas is done, it's January, it's miserable. I want to go somewhere where it's warmer and I still want to be able to make X amount of money that month. That sounds good to me.
Yeah. So yeah, a UK base and then traveling around basically. Yeah. Yeah. Why would you still want your base in the UK? Is it because it's where you grew up? Do you have a particular attachment there? Is anything keeping you in the UK?
Yeah, it's because it's where I grew up. And I'll be very direct. I think one of the biggest risks facing the UK at the moment is brain drain. I think it's people going, do you know what? I don't really like living in this country anymore. And the people that are most able to do that, leaving, and then the country not getting better at all. Because we've been in a state of decline for quite some time now. And there is no guarantee that a country should work or do better over time. That's not owed to any of us. It's because of all of our hard work collectively that the country continues to do well. So I just look at it as I'm from the UK. All the experiences I've had, good and bad, have been given to me by this country, and I want to at least try and give back. I don't think the UK cares that much. No, let me correct that. London. I don't think London really cares that much about people, where people come from. There are places that I grew up now that are just unrecognizable. Place I grew up as a child are unrecognizable. That would be impossible for people who grew up there to buy houses there. So London can sometimes feel like a place where you work so that you can earn money to afford the house that you barely spend any time in. But I do still want to try. And then we'll see. Like who knows, in a few decades' time, maybe our ability to get around and travel and stuff and work remotely will be such that the idea of living in any one location will seem alien. I know people who, instead of choosing to rent in the UK, or people who maybe live with their parents, are just traveling because they realize, well, why am I going to spend 1 to 2 grand on rent when I can just not rent and then just go to another country and just live there? And my money will go a lot further. So still earn in pounds, but just spend in the local currency. I know a lot of people that are doing that now.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally, speaking from my own perspective, like I grew up in the UK. It's definitely changed since I was there. I won't go into, how I feel about it or any political views like that. But I definitely wanted to explore living abroad since I had that experience. So I first started in France and then I ended up here in Spain, and I've been happy since. And then I discovered a popular channel kind of in the travel expat space called Nomad Capitalist, and his motto of "Go where you're treated best" kind of stuck with me. And whilst I might not necessarily agree with everything he says or does or speaks about, it's still, it's impacted me in a way where I look at the world differently. Like I could go, if I really wanted to, I could go wherever I wanted to. And having that kind of lifestyle is something that I see is very valuable. The UK has obviously given a lot to me in terms of education and whatnot. But I just chose a different path to
Of
pursue
course, yeah.
a different
You've
pathway. Yeah.
done great. The whole time I think we've known each other, you've been in Spain. So
So coming back to personal finance in general, not so much what you do with Mr. Money Job, but kind of general kind of tips and stuff for people. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing people living in the UK from a personal finance perspective at the moment?
yeah, cost of living is really high, and emphasis on the living part. So like the costs that you can't typically avoid are the ones that we've seen go up. So that's what's happening in the day to day. We've already spoken about kind of more less obvious challenges like people upping and leaving, or like pessimism. So like the last data that we had in the country showed that we went into recession in the second half of 2023. So we might still be in recession. But I think looking forwards, something that's hugely challenging, and I say this as someone who's in their mid 30s, and I've got friends who started families now, just the basics like buying a house, starting a family, and earning a decent wage are like really hard. But those you need those three things to build a stable civilization and for the population to have confidence in the place where they're living. And I don't think that confidence is particularly high now. And there was a report that came out the other day by a think tank, not an official government report, that said that the state pension age might have to rise to 71 by 2050 because we're all living and working so long, but also not having enough children. And so I feel like if we want to get the country back on track, we actually need to stop with all the fancy stuff and just go families, wages, housing, healthcare, education. Do you know what I mean? Like just the really basic stuff. If stuff is really expensive, if like buying a house is really expensive and everyone's renting, then they're going to be thinking way less long term about things like starting a relationship, which means that they will be way less likely to want to meet someone and settle down, which results in less kids, fewer kids later, which means that all the people that are still alive have to work that much longer to keep the system going. That's not good. And I don't know, I don't have the answers to that either, but I think that needs to be fixed ASAP.
Yeah. Yeah. And something I saw you said when you had a discussion with Laura and Moore, I think it was the cost of singleness. So whilst someone feels like they don't want to settle down and start a family, they've still got that higher
Yeah.
cost of you know, all everything they buy is for one person and it's not split between
Yeah, I think the
two. So
conclusion we
it's
reached in that conversation was like the cost of single relative to the cost of being in a relationship is like night and day. But then the cost of starting a family versus being single probably equals things out.
yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, personally, I've been back to the UK. I don't go back very often, maybe like once a year at the moment. And probably have to have some context to this. Like, Spain is much lower in terms of cost than the UK, and Madrid is maybe one of the more expensive cities. But I go back to like my hometown of Newcastle, and I see the price of things, and I think, well, I've become used to like Spanish costs, or like the UK is actually getting really
Yeah.
expensive.
You're saying you don't
Yeah.
fancy buying mouthwash for £5 a bottle?
Yeah, I'll bring that one from Spain.
Yeah, no, yeah. Don't get me wrong. Like these, I think it's just about priorities. I choose to believe that anything is possible. I think all these things that we think of as real, even money itself, are just systems we've made up to allow society and like civilization to function. We saw things that seemed unchangeable actually be rewritten in the pandemic, and that's just proof that if we want to bring about a particular outcome, we can just change the rules to bring that outcome about. We just need to agree on what needs to be prioritized and then just go for it.
Yeah. And related to that, something I've always like held the mindset of since I started my personal finance journey is like, yes, it might not be my fault that I'm where I am, but it's on me to get myself out of it. Like, I'm the only one who can change my
Yep.
situation. So I won't make excuses. Like, if I have to go bare bones with whatever I have to get by or to move forward and then make progress later, like,
Yeah,
I will do that because it's on me
sure.
to change it. So for people who are maybe, you know, struggling with the cost of living crisis or trying to take those steps to improve their financial situation, we'll talk about budgeting first. So what kind of tips would you give someone who's maybe setting up a budget for the first time? Because I know we did what was that platform called that was super
Instagram
popular and
Live,
then just no Instagram Live. We did another one. It was like the
Clubhouse.
audio Clubhouse. Yeah, Clubhouse when it was popular. You and I and a couple of others, we did like a forum on there for like UK money bloggers. And I know you talked about kind of having your bills go out on a certain day and things like that. Tell us a bit more about kind of what tips you use when you run your budget.
Yeah, I think if you don't want to think about budgeting all the time, then it does come down to building systems which you build once and then you forget about them or you come back to them every so often and you tweak them. Having all your bills come out on the same day every month or paying into a pot where your bills come out of it, which I know some of the banks offer now, is one such system because it just means that and my bills come out at the start of the month. It means that you get paid, your bills come out on or around the same day, and then all the money that's left in your bank account is yours to do with what you want, rather than it being £25 being taken automatically one day, £10 being taken automatically the other day. So you're just giving yourself certainty of disposable income through that. Spending from a different bank account from the account you get paid into is another one. If you spend money, if you have difficulty controlling your spending, it's not because you're a bad person. You're going to spend money that's there. So get paid into one bank account, but spend from another. And send you on that bill day, send yourself pocket money that you're allowed to spend for that week or that month. And just watch, your spending will adjust. But I also think a mindset shift that is important for everyone to have is there's nothing wrong with spending, and we're all very sophisticated spenders of money. Just as long as you spend 90% of your money or 80% of your money. I think that's just it when it comes to budgeting. I think the 50-30-20 principle is massively underrated. But if you actually just look at the money you have and go, okay, how much needs to go on stuff I need to spend it on? how much do I want to spend? That's the 50%. How much do I want to spend on stuff I want to do? That's the 30%. And then how much am I keeping? 20%. If you look at it as like, I'm going to spend as much as I want, as long as it's with 80% of my money, or 90%, or 95, whatever amount you can keep is, then that's a huge shift, because the amount of money that you keep is stuff that you can then use that to pay off debt. You can use it to save an emergency fund. You can use it to save towards a house deposit. You can use it to invest. But I remember being younger and just seeing all the money I had as being liable for spending. And
Yeah.
and then you're basically relying on your employer to then pay you again so that you can get your money back. And that's a tricky position to be in. When I saved my first emergency fund, though, that was the first time in my life when I was like, oh, right, I could like leave my job right now and I would still be able to keep the lights on for like a couple of months. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the financial piece of that is unmatched. Just being able to go to sleep at night and know that there's some money like away, that if something happens, you're going to be okay for a bit of time.
Yeah.
I think it gives you massive peace of mind. And the 50-30-20 rule is, as much as I maybe don't think it's perhaps the best rule out there, I go by like a kind of a zero-based budgeting method. So I like build from scratch up, what do I need to spend on X, Y, Z? And then that's kind of how I do my budget. And I'll maybe even start by like, what are my saving and investing goals first, and then build my budget around that. But definitely the 50-30-20 rule for someone who's getting started is definitely a good guideline. So I think anything that you do to start, like one step is always a step in the right direction. And then another mindset that I have is like the Kaizen mindset of like 1% better, like each time, or what one change can I do today or tomorrow that's going to make it that much better. And then with time, like you'll find the perfect system, like the optimal system for you. And so talking now about investing, the offense side of things, what is your approach to investing? Are you mainly like ETFs, index funds? How much or what percentage of your income are you investing typically? Tell us a bit about how you approach investing.
I have a monthly direct debit set up to go into a global tracker fund, and that's it. Yeah.
Simple as that?
I used to do individual stocks, but I don't anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, same for me. It became too time consuming. I think the risk with individual stocks, as someone from a finance background, I know it's something I could probably get away with because I have the knowledge to be able to read a P&L statement, a cash flow statement, and then make a decision. But there's a lot of knowledge, insight, understanding that needs to come with that to make effective investment decisions with single stocks. And for me, it was time consuming. And second, like, you probably get similar or better results just with an index fund.
And I think what's also important to say is investing in yourself. So yeah, you can invest in stuff, but literally the reason why I know all this stuff about money, why I felt the confidence to invest in the first place, is because I did like a year or two of just like really reading and learning about how all this stuff works. So just going on Amazon and putting in, investing UK books, or there are so many now. There weren't that many when we got started, but there are so many books that have come out in the last 3-4 years. Going on YouTube and watching Warren Buffett's interviews with Becky Quick, his CNBC interviews, is a way for you to invest in yourself when you have relatively small sums, so that once you come into the money, you know what to do with it. Everyone's investing journey is different. And it comes down to the stuff that you learn along the way. And recognizing that building wealth is for anyone and that you can do it with very, very small sums of money. So again, like there's lots of different platforms out there. Many will let you invest from £1. The platform I use lets you invest from £25 a month. And then you can invest up to £20,000 per year tax-free in stocks and shares ISA. Just not feeling like investing or building wealth isn't for you. It's definitely something you can learn about. It's definitely something you can do, and it's definitely something you can do even if you don't have that much money.
Yeah. I do miss ISAs along with Nando's and one or two other things in the
There's
UK.
no Nando's in Spain.
Massive. No, there's not. There's
So
not a Nando's in
it's
Spain.
in Portugal,
So
but not Spain.
yeah. So you have like similar restaurants in Portugal. You have. I was there last month in Lisbon for a day, and there was like it was called Chiquinho, the place, and it was like exactly like Nando's. So you do have like the like roasted chicken
So
breast
can I just
restaurants.
clarify? Is there no Nando's in Portugal?
Not that I'm aware
Can
of.
we
I
pull this
think
up?
my understanding.
How did I? Is there Nando's in Portugal?
I'm keeping this in. This is an important discussion.
ThePortugalist.com is Nando's Portuguese. The restaurant flourished, and within 2 years there were 4 outlets, 3 in Johannesburg in South Africa and the other in Portugal. These days there are no longer any Nando's restaurants in Portugal, and any Portuguese that have tried Nando's will be quick to tell you that it's not authentic Portuguese. Okay, fine. So I wasn't wrong about that. It just isn't there anymore. Fine.
yeah. No, I went with a Portuguese friend like many years ago to a Nando's, and she said like, yeah, this is this is not
course,
like what
yeah.
we have in Portugal. Yeah, yeah. Anyways, yeah, Nando's aside.
It's important.
It is important. It's very important. It's come up. It's come up as a topic of discussion in 2 of the 3 podcasts
Right,
I've recorded so far. So you can tell it. Well, now with this one, 3 of the 4 podcasts I've recorded. So super important. Anyways, so your your tracker fund that you invest in is global. Sure. It's a global tracker fund. Yeah. So is that you had a discussion on this on your Instagram as well about the S&P 500 versus a global tracker fund, and what's the reason you went for? Well, I think it was Damien Talks Money. He chose the global fund over the S&P 500. But is there a reason you chose a global tracker fund?
Yeah, I think for very similar reasons to Damien. I'm always researching and learning, right? And you just learn that the US is currently the biggest stock market in the world, but it hasn't always been and won't always be. There are great reasons to invest in the S&P 500. Many of the companies that we use are American. It is, in a sense, a global index because, according to Jack Bogle, in his book, the Little Common Sense book of investing, roughly 51% of all profits that flow into the US are from outside the US anyway. So it's a international economy. 30 years ago, the US comprised about a third of all global stocks, but now it comprises about 2/3. So it's doubled, but like it might not always be where it's at. If you invest in the global tracker fund will just invest into global stocks in the proportions that they are in today. And then if anything shifts or changes, then so too will the fund. But
yeah,
I don't want to confuse anyone or make anyone. Do you know what I mean? Like someone has done all the reading, all the research, and they found the platform and they've opened a stocks and shares ISA, and then all of a sudden they're being told, no, the S&P 500 isn't good. No, that's not what we're saying. It's just that you're investing in one locality versus in the globe.
Exactly. A book I've been reading recently is called The Millionaire Expat, which is a really interesting book. He talks about exactly what you just said as well. Like, whilst the US is the biggest stock market, like if you just go for the US, you might miss out on some of the returns in emerging markets. And as you say, like the US might not always be the biggest stock market. There's videos online, predicting the demise and complete downfall of the US, which are maybe doomsayers. Maybe it's a step too far,
anytime soon. I don't see us stopping using Google or Meta or Apple products anytime soon. But we're talking about decades, right? No one knows where the global stock market is going to be in another 30 years. So as someone who just likes to set stuff up and forget about it, I just went global. I can close my eyes for 30 years and open them again, and I'll still be happy being on a global tracker.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. And that's globally diversifying your investments. Have you ever thought about globally diversifying your everyday banking and finances? Like, for example, opening a bank account in another country?
No, maybe the US, because I was born there, but it's not something I've prioritized. No.
Okay. I guess it's something we're not really told about. Neither in general personal finance space and definitely not like as we're younger. Um, but coming back to Nomad Capitalist, he talks about, diversifying and banking around the world and things like that. As kind of asset protection. And again, maybe it's like a doomsday scenario that like one economy completely collapses or a currency completely collapses. But that's kind of
I don't disagree with that perspective at all. I think that if more of us ran our finances like companies did, then our finances would be in much better shape. And the biggest corporations in the world aren't just going to keep all their money in one geographic region. They're going to spread it out. So I think that there's definitely wisdom there. The main difference being that the average person doesn't have as much money as the average company. And so they're probably okay. Certainly if you have like less than 85 grand in savings, if you leave it in a UK bank, then it's covered.
Yeah, that's true. That's true as well. Um, but I don't know if someone is listening to this and they are interested, like a service that I use, which I have an affiliate link for as a disclaimer, is like Raisin, and that allows you to open bank accounts through the platform in other European countries, and you can often get better like deposit rates and things like that. So that in a sense is a form of banking diversification. Like through that platform, I have like a bank account in Sweden because it's a high interest like current account. And it's not something that I can find here in Spain, and probably not maybe in the UK. But yeah, I have other accounts in the UK anyway. So yeah. Okay, so last finance question. What is one thing that everyone or anyone can do to improve their financial situation, like kind of immediately?
I'm going to repeat what I said before. As far as is possible, spend as lavishly as you want to, but with 90% of your money, 80% of your money. The smaller you can make that percentage and the more money you keep, the better your financial outcomes down the line.
Yeah. So always keeping some money
Yeah,
in
and then
emergency
saving or
reserve
investing that.
for help. Yeah. Perfect. Now to finish, I always ask my guests a fun question. So you started an interesting hobby a
End
year
of
ago, maybe?
2022.
End of 2022. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, stand up. Started it at the end of 2022. I've always enjoyed comedy, and I think stand-up comedians are great teachers. And I just really like it as a medium to share your views on things, but to also share ideas. Some of the first ideas that I had around wealth building were from Chris Rock, for example. He has a stand-up special where he talks about the difference between being rich and being wealthy, with a lot of profanity kind of thrown in. It's quite funny, but that was like one of my first educations in, oh wow, the amount of money that you make doesn't always equal up to how wealthy you are. And I'd never heard it put in those terms. So being someone that speaks about money and engages people on a topic that's quite taboo and can be quite terrifying for people, I sought out ways to learn how to better engage people and make the topic a lot less scary. And I think it's helped. Stand-up's very scary. It also takes a long time to get very proficient at it. Many of the stand-ups that we like today have been doing it in the background for like 5-10 years. But I think when you do hard things, it makes easier things easier. Same goes for when I ran. Not only did I do that at the end of 2022, I ran a marathon for the first time. And when you do something that's so difficult, and you're like, well, I thought that that would kill me, and it didn't. When you get slapped with something a lot less difficult, then you can just you know that you could do it because you've done harder things before.
Yeah. And do you find stand-up, is it difficult, or do you feel like you have a lot of ideas and it's very easy to get out there and express them?
Yeah, stand up is hard because unlike other types of performance, it's just you. So if you mess up a line, or if you forget, or if what you're saying just doesn't make the crowd laugh, guess what? There's no background music, there's no dancers, there's no special effects. It's just you, and you kind of have to carry on going. And that's happened to me a couple of times. But on the flip side of that, when you share your ideas, when you tell jokes and people find them funny, and you get that back and forth between the audience, it feels really good. And I would say my top 10 feelings of like feeling happy, excited have come with like shows that have gone particularly well. So yeah, I would recommend it to anyone who wants a challenge. Do stand up or improv and see how you get on with it.
Nice. And how do you avoid like laughing at your own jokes? Because I've seen like Kevin Hart.
It's an act. It's part of their act. They laugh to let you know when you, as the audience, should laugh. Laugh tracks in TV shows work in a very similar way. You're way more likely to laugh at an unfunny TV show if there's a laugh track versus if there isn't. And equally, Dave Chappelle will tell a joke, and then he'll do that thing where his body bends over and he knocks his knee with his microphone. Yeah, you're even laughing now. It's just letting you know when to laugh.
Yeah.
The best stand-up comedians in the world, everything is choreographed. Every word that's in there and every word that's not in there is there for a reason. And the illusion is that it sounds like a stream of consciousness or something that they're saying to you for the first time. But they've said it dozens of times before. And the way that you get to a special is that you come up with all this material. It's kind of like software engineering in a way. You start off with an MVP, and then you perform it, and you take out the bits that aren't funny, and you keep in the bits that are, and then you refine stuff, until you end up with that 60 minutes of material that the whole thing is funny. But you weren't there when they were like performing in a smaller club, and they performed a joke, and then they were like, okay, fine, I'm never ever saying that again, because no one laughed at that. So it's a really cool art form, I think. And it's not about being funny either. There are loads of stand-ups that aren't funny, and there are loads of funny people who can't go on stage and tell jokes. It's about performing and about selling an emotion or a feeling or an image. So what I would say is stand-up comedians that I find funny, stand-up comedians that I don't find funny, I respect all of them, because what they're doing is very, very difficult.
Cool. Well, Timi, thank you so much for being on the podcast. The wisdom, you're a very wise person. A lot of what you shared, I'm sure, will help a lot of people.
You too, man. Thank you for having me on. Thanks for letting me share a bit more about myself as well.
So I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys, found it interesting and helpful. I'll leave the link to Timi's social media in the video description on YouTube and in the episode notes on various podcast platforms. Remember, if you'd like to support the podcast and what Millennials with Money does in terms of helping and providing support and information to people, then you can do so by becoming a member on YouTube or by becoming a Patreon. And in return, as a thank you, you'll get to find out who the upcoming guests on the podcast are, and you'll get the response to your specific question in an exclusive video for members only. And with that said, guys, till next time, I'll see you on the next one, and let's get this money.